Yay!
Look at that. Success.
Live.
So this is super exciting. I'm going to test it out by going to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so for those of you who are wondering why we're so ecstatic right now, Kira, your image is still very large.
Oh, yes, I was putting on lipstick. Sorry, everybody. Okay.
So we usually have our tech guy, Jerome, who starts us off with a beautiful banner and some lovely music to tune us in for the first 3 minutes. But Jerome is out today, so we are figuring this out.
And he did not answer.
So we're figuring this out, and Kira's going to make sure that we are actually streaming live.
Yep, I sure am. That's what I meant. I should have done this before while we were just doing nothing. But I'm going to do it now. So I'm pretty proud of myself because I figured out StreamYard this morning.
Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of you.
And it looks like we're going, hey,
there we are.
We are live. I'm a technological genius. I don't know if you guys knew that. Well, I was just saying to Sammy and Melissa, by the way, we have our guest today, Melissa. We're going to shoot the shit just a little bit here just so people who get our notifications have an opportunity to jump on, because since we don't have Jerome in today, we don't have our amazing intro or any of that, which is probably something I should have done beforehand. Like, hey, Jerome, would you send over that sweet intro you made us? But I didn't. But I was just talking to Sammy and Melissa about how I went to school for television and radio production, but we were still cutting and splicing film. Like, that is how old I am. But to be fair, we were the last class to cut and splice film. They stopped doing that at Bradley after I left. But we were editing digitally already on Avid bays and, lugging around. God, those cameras had to have been like 20, 25 pounds.
Where you got all those big muscles from.
Yeah. Boom. We're doing linear editing and all of that. So, so this is all while I supposedly have experience in production. Mostly that just means that I can do decent lighting and set up shots nice at this point. Otherwise, it's not really all that helpful anymore because technology is so different. I graduated in 2004, so from college. So it is a world of difference now, 16 years later. So how you ladies doing?
Doing good this morning so far.
So far, so good. Yeah. How about you, Sam?
Well, I caught up on the past week of the Young Turks this morning. So I was, trying not to cry while putting on my makeup, because I actually put on makeup this morning.
And you can't listen to that without crying.
Oh, I know. And hearing Anna Kasparian tear up while watching, it's just.
Anytime Anna starts tearing up, I start tearing up. I can't help it when Anna starts crying.
I know.
She's such a tough broad because I'm such a crybaby, and she's so tough. And I'm like, man, she's crying.
Well, and, also, trying not to cry, but also very excited simultaneously, very confusing emotions to have at the same time. But today is the 51st anniversary of the start of the Stonewall riots. So I'm celebrating this morning. Got my little pan flag here, and my Pride is a Protest t-shirt that I'm wearing today. Mm-hmm. So very excited to be celebrating my queerness and the ability to be proud about it openly without, necessarily dying, even though that's still a risk. But less so now than in 1969. So
right on. We have Heimdall's Gate in the chat with us.
Yes.
So there's and he says he hates hate watching is one thing, but the Young Turks, wow. So Heimdall's Gate, I take it, is not a fan of the Young Turks. That's okay. It's interesting because a lot of the conversation, and I don't want to get into this because we're talking about chronic pain today, and I think we're good on getting into that now because we've been rolling now for 5 minutes. So, but yeah, there's a lot of conversation about Young Turks gravitating more to the center. Since Jank is only now coming over to the defund police side, I'm already like, abolish police. Like, all right, come on, dudes, get the hell over here. So yeah, I hear you, Heimdall's Gate. So today we are talking about chronic pain. And who deals with it? Why do people deal with it? What's it all about? How do you deal with it? And our guest today is Melissa Dishaw, who is actually from Arkansas. She lives in Arkansas. And while she's still in the central time zone, so, she's not further ahead or behind us, she's in a completely different region of the country. And so that also might be an interesting thing to touch on is how, folks in Arkansas talk about something like chronic pain versus people, say, in Chicago or more of the urban areas. So, Melissa, welcome. I'm so glad that you could make it. So I know Melissa because I work with her through clinical somatic movement, which is a modality of pain relief. It's a movement modality that helps people connect their brain to their bodies. It creates new neural pathways, or maybe reminds you of old neural pathways that have been long forgotten. So, Melissa, will you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your history, who you are, and welcome.
Hey, thank you. Yes, I am originally from Northwest Arkansas. We're a little different than the rest of Arkansas. We're one of the more, we've gotten more attention lately the last few years as a good place to move. We got great trails, and we got Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt, all of that stuff. But other than that, I've lived in Texas as well, and I enjoyed my time there when I lived there. Super hot, though. It's super hot. But I grew up in Arkansas though I was here till I was 19, and it's been interesting. And I came back, and then I lived in our college town up here, Fayetteville, which is a little different. It's more hippie and got a lot of college students, and it's less conservative than the rest of the area of Northwest Arkansas. And then chronic pain happened and stuff like that. So I moved back up to Rogers to be with my family. But this is definitely very conservative area, a lot of evangelical Christianity. But it also does have very kind people, and yeah.
Can you tell us a little about how your chronic pain started? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I actually started walking on my toes when I was a toddler, and that never went away. And then eventually, whenever I got to at least by my teenage years, I started limping, and then my walking pattern developed more of an abnormal gait. And then by the time I was in my early mid-20s, I started having hip pain, and it would happen occasionally. And I went to the doctors for it. They didn't know what to do about it. They found out I had an ovarian cyst, and so they were thinking maybe that was part of my chronic pain, and maybe it was. And then it got worse and worse and worse, and then I was basically having it on like a few days a week instead of just every here and there. And then I started having more pain. I got into a car accident in 2017, and I was dealing with a lot of changes I didn't know how to handle in my life. And so I ended up having then like back spasms, and then I started having chest pain, and then the doctors put me on medicine. Then I started not being able to breathe very well, and then more chronic pain happened, and then ended up having surgery, and then I got the surgery. Some of my pain went away, some of it did not. And then I started learning about chronic pain months later.
And what's been, because there's so many questions that's going on in my brain right now that I could ask you. What's been the most surprising discovery that you've made in the last year and a half since you've started looking into chronic pain? What's been one of the most surprising discoveries for you about chronic pain?
I would say that, trying to put it into words, like in a way I can have power over chronic pain, maybe. I'm not sure if that's the words I want to say, but I'm not as helpless as I thought I was to chronic pain.
Like there's almost like a sense of responsibility around it. Like you can actually take responsibility and move forward inside of your own power.
Yeah, where I don't have to be dependent on doctors and take all kinds of medication and do all kinds of physical therapy to manage it or heal it or any of that sort.
Yeah, and I've, and we were jesting before the show about drugs. Just take some drugs. Just take drugs. That'll cure your chronic pain.
Lots of them.
Yeah, just disassociate from your body. Ignore that the pain is there. It's probably nothing. Take some drugs.
And drugs work for all kinds of other things in life too. BTW.
BTW. Drugs are the answer. But in my experience with my own clients, with myself, stories that I've heard from others, research that I've done, tuning out of that pain and trying to find a quick solution to it, like, oh, I'll just take these drugs, generally just ends up with more side effects and now other conditions that you have to deal with as a result of the drugs and being dependent on the pharmaceuticals versus actually just tuning into your body and, associating versus disassociating, ignoring your body and creating a disconnect versus actually connecting with your body, listening to the messages that it's sending you, and learning about how you can take care of yourself in such a way as to decrease or manage or accept. Because for some people, chronic pain never goes away. For many people, there is no solution to it. And so there's a component of being able to tune into that and accept that this is the body that you have.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I was going to ask you, Melissa, because I know so much about your history because we have worked together for not a very long time, but a long enough time. And inside of the world of chronic pain, in my experience, and Sammy, you work with very similar clientele as I do. You really get to know people and you get to know them really, really well because there is so much that goes into someone dealing with chronic pain. And one of the things that I do know about your history, Melissa, is that, who you were surrounded by were very much like, you're just not trying hard enough, kind of a conversation. So what did you find that, as a young girl, did to your psyche, and how did that create maybe more chronic pain for you?
Yeah, so I could definitely tell you I'm now learning how to listen to my body. I feel like I've been a great stranger to my body, but growing up, that definitely caused me to be more out of tune with my body and not listening to it. Treating my body almost like an enemy. You're holding me back. You're not letting me do what I want to do or what other people think I should be able to do. And so, I would push myself to do activities and like do sporting things that I just needed to know my limits and accept my limits, and instead I didn't, and I tried to please other people as well in that, because I had some people get upset with me whenever doing group activities, like with running. I wasn't able to run as fast, and so I would push myself, and it was more about appeasing them than it was about me. And so yeah, it was, I learned then too, more about, I mean, it goes with other things that happened in my past, but pleasing other people rather than being in tune with me and what my needs are at the time.
Absolutely. And I totally forgot what I was going to say just now. I was like, I was reading over at the comments, which we got E Heller 42, who says chronic pain sucks.
It does.
And you know that kind of reminds me, Sammy, of the statistic that we looked up this morning about the amount of people who deal with chronic pain, because you know we have a couple people in the chat who are very much relating to this topic, right? Like,
oh yeah,
and it sucks, it doesn't feel great, all of that stuff. And so we had it before we looked up the statistic that 100% of people.
Everybody has dealt with chronic pain, right? Yeah. Everybody. So I would actually like to define what chronic pain is. So chronic pain is experiencing a level of physical pain most days for at least 12 weeks straight. So, so 12 weeks is what makes it chronic, and it has to be experienced most days. So you can have some days without pain and still be considered as having chronic pain. And so I myself had never considered me to be someone who deals with chronic pain, even though I wake up every morning with neck pain. And some mornings I wake up and can't move my head side to side because of a neck trauma, head and neck trauma that I experienced when I was really young, which is what these beautiful scars on my head are from. And so, but I would never, my body is very functional. I move around easily. I can exercise. There are some exercises that I can't do because they activate my traps. There are some types of shirts and sports bras I can't wear because if my neck is activated, I have more pain. And so I just knew that about myself, but wouldn't consider myself for so long to be someone who actually deals with chronic pain. So when we looked up this statistic that 20.4% of people deal with chronic pain, I was like, no, I think that's skewed. I think that's skewed because there's so many people like myself and like you, Melissa.
What Melissa was pointing to, like, no, like, I just have to try harder. I just have to push further.
Exactly. So people like me and Melissa who walk around feeling like, oh no, this is just an imagined thing, or it's not so severe that I'm not functional in other ways in my life, and therefore I must not be dealing with chronic pain. But ultimately, yeah, there are probably a lot more than 20.4%. That's just the reported number. But yeah, 20.4% of Americans are dealing with chronic pain.
And I think it's really important to bring this up and to have awareness around the fact that A, you're dealing with chronic pain, probably. And B, what does that mean? Like, what does chronic pain actually cause in people's lives? You know, well, you know, one of the things that I can point to right away is like your attention is really never 100% on anything, because you're subconsciously and a lot of times consciously transfixed and focused on what you're dealing with inside your body with the chronic pain. You know, so, you know, Melissa, you know, I'm sure that you can definitely speak to that in your experience of your life, being that, you know, from as long as you can remember, chronic pain has been a part of your life. How have you seen it show up for you, you know, just through your day-to-day life? Even the small examples, I think, are some of the most important things to point out and bring to light.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I don't know how to, like, what I can and cannot do or participate in one way. Right now, I do walk with a cane. I did not used to have to walk with a cane. It got to the point with as we were talking about, things just got worse and I didn't know how to take care of myself with chronic pain. I just kept persevering. So that ended up with my situation getting worse. And also, though, I did get a diagnosis when I was 22. It wasn't until I was 22 that said I had hereditary spastic paraplegia. So that also says that it'll only get worse for me. And so, but I know a little bit different wise, but yes, definitely I struggle with knowing what I feel like I can or cannot do. And sometimes I will limit myself as to what I can do, but I actually probably could do it, but I have my pain in the back of my mind that's telling me a different story. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So it stopped you from probably doing a lot of things that you wanted to do. You know, so I think that's probably a really big piece of it. We have a question for you from Heimdall's Gate. Have you tried using chronic to treat chronic pain? It helps me in a big way. And actually, I have been a regular marijuana user in my life. And generally, marijuana has been for me to dissociate just from my life more than from
your mental pain.
It's really great for that too. But Melissa, a question for you: Have you tried using marijuana to resolve chronic pain at all?
I've used CBD before, oil or whatever you call it, but I haven't yet. It hasn't exactly been a conversation that has happened with me and a doctor before, except for CBD oil. We're just now getting that. Well, it happened a little while ago, but the conversations of getting that legalized, medical marijuana in Arkansas. But that's
where is that conversation in Arkansas, by the way?
Huh?
Where is that conversation? Medical marijuana legalization in Arkansas. Is it legal in Arkansas or not?
I don't think it is quite yet. It might actually. I think it is. I think it has within the past year or so, because I had a friend from Arizona that was able to have it, and then he moved here and wasn't able to. But now I believe he is able to.
Okay. Right on. Yeah, I think it's becoming, I know it's becoming more and more accepted as a method of all kinds of pain relief, nausea reduction, which it's super helpful for.
But also, like, marijuana can, similar to any drug, it has different effects for different people. I know that for many people, marijuana can help dissociate from the body. For me, marijuana causes me to associate very strongly with my body.
I can't smoke it if I have a headache.
Yeah, no, if I have a headache, if I have neck pain, if I have any type of pain, it's all I can focus on and think about when I'm high. So if I'm experiencing pain, marijuana is not the way for me to go. It's when I'm feeling real good and without pain that I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good thing to do.
Well, then you don't need it, Sammy.
No, it's great.
Okay.
It's great. It's great when I'm feeling nauseous, though. But
it is for nausea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then E. Heller says, months of sheltering in place have shown me how important sleep and hydration is to help chronic pain, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that to be the case, Melissa, for yourself? Sleep, hydration, those kind of like the self-care items.
I think those do have an impact. I don't think it, at least with my chronic pain, but it does play a part in how severe I may feel it. Or
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, the other things that, people with chronic pain are dealing with is a lot of tension. And, so one of the things that I want to bring up about people who are dealing with chronic pain is, these are the people, you hear the thing about kicking your cat, right? The people who kick their cat, so it's this ripple effect of a way of being, right? Your mood changes when you are in chronic pain. the way you view life changes when you're in chronic pain, and the way you view other people. For some people, maybe empathy is greater when they're in chronic pain, but for a lot of people, including myself, when I'm in pain, my empathy goes down. And so if you want to look at the whole idea, this ripple effect idea of cause and effect, and how who we're being out in the world affects, what we receive back.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic pain can make a really big difference if we have it and are dealing with it, and if we're not. So I see that as being a really big impact for people who are dealing with chronic pain. And Sammy, I'm positive you see a lot of that in your line of work.
Yeah, totally. So I work therapeutically with patients who experience chronic illness. I say that I do chronic health therapy because that's the direction we're moving in, is chronic health. Yeah. So in chronic health therapy, what I focus on with my clients is helping to associate with their body, form a healthy relationship with their body, to listen to what is needed and how to make those small changes in the day-to-day that will help benefit. And also to know their limits, to listen to your body, like you were saying, Melissa, to know what your limits are. And how to advocate for those limits, how to communicate with people about, no, I just can't do that, and how to stay strong in that stance when people are pushing you to do something that is outside of your limits. But what we also focus a lot on is stress reduction and stress management, because cortisol has such a big impact on our bodies and dealing with chronic pain or chronic illness, those cortisol levels are elevated all the time. Cortisol typically is there's a flash of it. A dog barks at you while you're on a walk, and your brain is triggered to release cortisol. It's a single release. But when you're experiencing a chronic condition such as pain, that cortisol is always elevated, and there are serious implications to that. We have elevated blood pressure. We have decreased metabolism, elevated blood pressure, elevated heart rate, and when we have it for long periods of time, we can, which is not medically proven or accepted, that adrenal fatigue is a thing. But when it's not adrenal fatigue is not medically accepted as a thing.
I guess I didn't know that.
Yeah, but
what would need to happen, do you know, for it to be medically accepted as a thing?
I think hormonally, the adrenal glands, whether they're overfunctioning, underfunctioning, is such a minute difference in tests that it's hard to actually statistically prove that the adrenal glands are overworking or underworking. So it's just based on the minute differences that we can't see in testing, but that our bodies can feel. So, okay. So that's why it's not medically accepted. And so, but when we do experience adrenal fatigue, I'm going to assert that is an actual thing. Then what happens is that we
doctors.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, just because the minutia in our body can't be tested doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so when our bodies are no longer able to produce cortisol at proper levels because we've been at such a high level of cortisol for so long, now we no longer have the ability to, our body no longer has the ability at that point to manage our inflammatory levels, because cortisol has a direct link to our inflammation. And so when our body can't manage,
Sammy, will you get into a little bit of what inflammation is? Because it's like, I feel like that's kind of a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And before we go on too further, I want to get what you define inflammation as.
Yeah, so inflammation is a response to our body's histamine levels. So you've heard of antihistamines. There's a little drug you can take that will reduce your histamine levels and reduce your inflammation.
It helped me very much.
Yes, they help me very much too because I have really high levels of inflammation in my body, and so do a lot of people. So histamines, when we have elevated levels of histamines in our body, what it is intended to do, histamines, it swells areas of our bodies that are injured, so that that fluid that it is swelling with can carry nutrients to that injured part of our body. And so when there is no actual injury in our body, when things are just going haywire and there's no actual point of injury, those histamines still have to do something. So those histamines will start attacking various parts of our body, which is generally based on a genetic predisposition. For me, it's my skin. My skin gets inflamed, so I get cystic acne or I get full body hives on a daily basis. And for other people, the histamines will attack their gut. So they'll have things like IBS. Histamines, I've worked with clients before where histamines attack their retina. So that causes progressive blindness in relation to levels of stress. So histamines can really attack any part of your body when there's no actual place for it to go to carry those nutrients and that inflammation. So and
Heimdall's Gate asks, inflammation is linked to every major cause of death, isn't it?
Well, when we look at heart disease is caused by inflammation of the heart. And it's one of the leading causes of death in the United States. So yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I never really had thought about it in that light, but I suppose you could definitely trace it back because, you hear like the Lululemon bags say like, 90% of illness is caused by stress. And it probably relates back to what Heimdall's Gate is pointing to here, which is that inflammation is causing a lot of issues inside the body. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to, sorry about the little.
Yeah, no problem. Well, and stress has many more effects than just inflammation. I mean, that inflammation in and of itself, like, can press on the nerves in your spinal column and cause nerve issues, pinched nerves, thus leading to chronic pain. And high cortisol levels can cause even more than that. I mean, cortisol is a catalyst for releasing sugar from the muscles and liver, which increases our blood sugar, because when we're in that fight or flight response, which is what cortisol is there for, we need to be able to either fight or run away. It's our fight or flight response. And in order to do either of those things, we need more sugar in our bloodstream. And so when we have consistently high levels of cortisol, we have consistently high levels of blood sugar as well. And when our body cannot keep up with those consistently high levels of cortisol, our insulin is massively produced, and then our cells become insensitive to that insulin because the body isn't actually needing any of this reaction. And so then we have type 2 diabetes. So yeah, consistently high levels of stress cause majority of the illnesses that we see in the United States. And so not only can chronic illness and chronic pain be caused by consistently high levels of stress, but chronic illness and chronic pain also causes consistently high levels of stress. So pain begets pain, and stress begets stress.
Yeah.
So what I work a lot with my clients is tuning into the body, forming a healthy, loving, accepting relationship with your body, and managing stress, which we do a lot by just taking care of ourselves, drinking enough water, sleeping enough, eating foods that are close to the earth, and meditating, breathing, learning how to notice when your body is activated so that you can learn then how to respond to that appropriately, like down regulating the nervous system. which I know is something that Kira is very familiar with as well.
That's what I do, actually. Well, and one of the things I was going to ask Melissa earlier, the question that I forgot about, that came back to me and what you were saying, Sammy, is, I find it personally a fine line sometimes between and this is, sometimes I'm a downer, you guys, a fine line sometimes between acceptance and giving up.
Mm-hmm.
So Melissa, as someone who's in the midst of this conversation for acceptance around your own body, your own limitations, what's possible, what's not possible, how do you navigate that acceptance versus fuck it?
I feel like I go between the two a lot. But I feel like, and it's actually my word for the year, is curiosity. And so I'm trying to remain curious about that stuff. Because as I've continued doing kinesomatics or clinical somatics, I've been able to feel my body move differently than I'm used to, and I'm like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. That surprised me. Yeah, but also realizing with kinesomatics and that kind of stuff is I haven't really learned how to regulate, and so I feel like I'm finally learning how to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
But acceptance is a huge piece, at least for me, because then that can calm me down whenever I'm having chronic pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are your, you use kinesomatics. What are some other methodologies that you use to navigate that successfully, that acceptance versus giving up? What methodologies do you step into? Because I find personally that I will resist what I know is best for me sometimes. I know that I should go do this tremoring practice because I'm in a mood. Yesterday I was I watched a little bit more about the Elijah McClain story and the DA and what an asshole he is and all that, and I was just in a mood, and I almost skipped my tremoring practice yesterday as a result of being in that mood.
Which is exactly what you need when you're in that mood.
And so what do you do? What do you do to step into it and be powerful and stepping into it and say, no, yes, this is what I need, versus I'm just going to curl up in a ball and lay in bed, which is largely what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I don't have it all together and I'm still figuring it out. I have on occasion, not very much since I've started working with you, Kira, that I have not done my clinical somatics during a day. And it's because of my chronic pain. But when that happened, those times I would try to be in tune with my body, and I would know, okay, I think I just need to chill out tonight. And I could tell I was dealing with something emotionally triggering me, something outside of physical stuff affecting me. And I just needed to instead take that time to deal with what I was dealing with emotionally to calm down and that kind of stuff. Because I will definitely say stuff outside, internal mindful stuff plays a part for me in my chronic pain. And I love, I started off learning about chronic pain with an app called Curable, and heard about John Sarno and healing back pain. I read that, and that's where I learned that I was catastrophizing, and I didn't know what that was. And so, yeah, that helped me a lot. I was dealing mainly at that point with my neck pain, and I eventually got over my neck pain, I think maybe from stopping catastrophizing my pain.
Yeah. So when we become aware of what we call in the mental health field cognitive distortions, which is what catastrophizing is, it's one of the many cognitive distortions. which is quite a mouthful. So when we become aware that we have these distorted cognitions that, oh my goodness, it's the end of the world. This is going to be forever. I'm never going to get rid of this. This is going to ruin this part of my life and that part of my life. We make it bigger than what it is. It gives our body this stress response, which then makes that pain that much worse.
Well, we have a great conversation going on in the chat room, right?
Yeah, I was looking at that a little bit.
So E. Heller says, right, the human body overreacts to injury a lot, hence the need. But what you're pointing to, Sammy, is like not only the body, the whole person, right? The whole person is overreacting to injury largely. I mean, I cut my finger on a knife. I'm like, I'm dying. Blood, no, right? And so I think that that's a lot of what this catastrophizing is an overreaction, and the body just follows sync. And so Heimdall's Gate then says, do you think our immune system is overreacting, or are we just in sync with what our systems are trying to do? One of the worst examples, peanut allergies. They just came out of, I think that nowhere, and are super dangerous, whereas we never had to worry about it when I was a child. I don't know much about peanut allergies, but Sammy, do you know
allergies in general can be linked to the many stresses that our body is going through. We consider mental stresses. That we live in a society where your average 30-year-old has to work 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. And, we also live in a society where pollution is at an all-time high. We live in a society where, where our the foods that we can afford are not necessarily what our body knows how to process, because, our body is a creation of nature. And when we're not eating things or putting things inside of our body that are also natural, our food is going against our body. And so our body and mind is going through so much stress at such high levels that this inflammation can actually, and I saw that they were saying that on Wick and Snap, peanut butter is actually one of the foods that is.
Yeah, I was just like, oh wow, this is exactly what you're speaking to too. Yeah,
yeah, totally. So what I've noticed, because my allergies actually change based on my stress levels. So when I go through high levels of stress, my food allergies change. So I never know what I'm allergic to at any given moment. And so why that is that when I change my diet to accommodate the foods that I'm eating, and then I go through high levels of stress, my body starts attacking whatever food I'm eating most. And so when what I'm consuming is a whole lot of tomatoes because I can't eat that stuff anymore, then suddenly I go through a stressful period and now I'm getting heartburn as a result of tomatoes, which I didn't before. So then I have to cut tomatoes out. Yeah, I know. So I used to be allergic to oats. I'm not anymore, thankfully.
And is it just because you stopped eating the oats? And then, okay.
I stopped eating the oats and then I became allergic to whatever else my body was eating. And so
very unfair. It seems very unfair.
Yeah, so I'm just consistently changing my diet, listening to what my body wants or doesn't want. I used to be lactose intolerant, and now I'm not. Now I can eat dairy. So yeah, those histamines, when your body is overreacting and when you're out of sync with it, and when your stress levels are high, as most of ours are, we can definitely form allergies that we didn't have to deal with before. And we see many more people these days with allergies that we didn't see that many people with allergies before, because we're just at higher levels of stress than we used to be.
I was just about to say, it's societal, right? Like,
yeah, it's definitely is societal.
As a society, life isn't as, I mean, I think that life, it's hard to say that life, because life is not necessarily harder,
no,
than like, say, hunter gatherer. Like that's gotta be stressful, right? So what is it about our lives now that make society or people more stressed out than, say, a few centuries ago? Well,
I mean, like I was saying, when you consider how we've modified our food sources, that stresses our body. Okay. So, and when the foods that stress your body are the only foods that are accessible to you because of financial difficulties, then you're stressing your body by consuming that. Sugar has become something that is very easily accessible and what many people are consuming, which wasn't always the case. We went through the low fat fad, which increased the sugar production of everything that we were consuming. And now we eat a lot more sugar than we used to, which again, stresses our body. Higher pollution levels in our atmosphere, which we can see increasing and increasing and increasing, that also stresses our body. So it's not necessarily just the psychology of it. It's the environment. It's everything around us that's contributing to that. So, our life compared to a hunter-gatherer's life, they're maybe being chased by bears or wondering where their next meal is going to come from or when a tribe is going to attack them. And, we're also dealing with various stresses that look different, but psychologically maybe aren't more stressful. But when you add in the environmental factors, it definitely compounds.
Yeah. And Ayana and Melissa, you and I have talked about this a little bit. Can we talk about stress passed down in our genes generations later and how that affects us regardless of what we do?
Yes.
And I think this also, speaks to that whole acceptance thing that we were talking about. But Melissa, what do you see in your own life generationally? That has been passed down for you because you've been dealing with your chronic pain and issues since you for as long as you can remember.
Yeah. A word that I've read a lot of books last year and trying to deal with my stuff, and a word that they relate a lot to this is epigenetics. There's a lot of women in my family that have similar chronic pain issues to what I'm dealing with. And I can see, let's see, how to use the word. It's just, I guess, generational trauma that it's just no one's dealt with it. And so it just keeps going and going and going. And so no one in my family in my past has really, well, I don't know if I would say it exactly like that, but no one in a way has gotten pain or gotten help, really chosen and felt safe to get help and giving themselves the right to take care of themselves instead of codependency or a number of those different issues. And I thankfully started seeing that stuff, and I also have seen a therapist and working out some of those issues. And so until someone finally starts to see what's actually going on instead of continuing in the patterns, that's the answer I know how to give right now.
And when you speak of epigenetics, are you, is it that literally the genes get changed inside of the body and it gets passed down? Is it that, stark? Because I know about patterning and those kinds of things, but there's a physical change.
Yeah, they say that with epigenetics, it's I forgot the wording. It's outside of the DNA, but attached to the DNA. It's holds on to the trauma of the person or something of that sort, and it can or cannot be activated. I guess I don't know if that's the right words, and so that can be passed down.
Interesting. Now, is it usually passed down
generationally? And I've read.
Oh, you certainly can finish your thought. I was going to ask, is it usually passed down from the mother only, or does the father also have some input there? I mean, obviously, it's his sperm, but I generally hear that, the mother is usually the ones whose genes, who those sorts of what is it? What's the, now I'm at a loss for words. You know, that's the stuff that gets passed down is from the mother. Is that the case, or is the father just as much involved with that?
I'm not sure. I think that it's both in a way, but most of what I've read has related it to the mother because of the egg being in the mother's body throughout the life of the mother. And so,
yeah. And then, Ayana says that she thinks she read, they think they read that it lasts at least 7 generations.
Yeah, so consider how much compounding that is.
Absolutely. Gosh, there's a lot going on in our chat. I'm just trying to, get it all. So Heimdall's Gate says it makes a lot of sense that the histamine is sensitizing so it can strengthen, but if it goes too far and cause damage, and then boom. Also pesticides are getting into the food supply. Yeah, corn syrup isn't everything. I get why corn farmers don't want to say anything bad about corn because it's a miracle crop when viewed as cost calories.
Yeah, and when you consider that, the glycemic index of corn, which the glycemic index is how quickly the sugar gets into your bloodstream and what kind of effect it has, what kind of peak it has on your blood sugar. The glycemic index of corn is actually higher than that of sugar. So corn is more damaging to our blood sugar than straight sugar is.
Yeah. And all of that. Yeah. And all of that is contributing factors to everything that we're dealing with as a society, all of the stress we see, all of the disease we see. And then, of course, the other piece is, someone mentioned pesticides. There's also a lot of pollution now in the air. We just covered a story on Hard Lens about plastic being now in the atmosphere, and that we as humans are actually breathing in about a credit card's worth of plastic. God, was it a year? Which sounds
nuts. Well, and it's like science is such an amazing thing. Science is working to find solutions to the problems that we have. Like, oh, let's just make some drugs that'll get rid of your pain. And that's great and that's beautiful. But then there's the consequence to that. Like for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, we make this medicine, it's going to solve your pain, but then you're going to have all the other issues to deal with. And then science is going to come in and deal with those issues. And then we need more science to deal with more issues. But if we just, take a few steps back and, get back to our nature, get back to, the natural food, get back to movement, like listening to your body and listening to your body's limits. And we don't need all the science to solve all of our problems.
And then Ayana, I knew Ayana was going to come up with some information on this as I was asking. There is evidence for some contribution of epigenetic regulation in mediating part of the ability of parental behavior experience to influence stress vulnerability in their offspring. Yeah, it's so interesting because coming up, I always just thought like, oh, you just repeat the patterns that you see in your parents, and to actually be aware of and start to understand that it is genetically, so much is genetically passed down. You hear these stories of kids that get adopted out as babies, and they have so many similarities to their biological parents that they never got to meet. And so it is incredible to see how it actually is something that's passed down through genetics, these behaviors, these ways of being, even the chronic pain. Even like one of the things I noticed is like I sit on the sofa and watch television in the same manner that my mother did.
Yeah.
And so, it's incredible. So what do we do?
I was gonna say, before we go, we gotta get into what we do about it.
I know we just talked about how we're all fucked.
Wait,
so what do we do now? And Sammy pointed to it a little. Sammy's frozen right now. That's okay. And what Sammy pointed to earlier was, getting down to being a little bit more, being more natural in the foods that we're choosing to consume. I think that that's one way. Of course, you're never really going to get away from this idea of pesticides unless you are producing your own food. But one of the things that I was going to point to, because producing one's own food could certainly be, I was talking to Sammy, just, getting.
I'm back.
You're back, baby. Getting back to eating more naturally, but also how that won't ever really get you away from this idea of pesticides unless you're producing your own food. But then that had me thinking about really finding low reward activities, low reward versus high reward activities. Most of us are very attracted to high reward activities, high reward foods, right? Like lots of sugar, things that, get our dopamine like surging, but also high reward activities like playing video games, watching television. Gambling is a high reward activity, even if you're kind of shitty at it, right? It's still high reward because, it gets all of your pleasure centers going. Mm-hmm. And when we take a step back from that and do more of the low reward activities, yesterday, for example, I went on a bike ride and then a hike through a forest preserve. That would be a low reward activity. Movement, doing the somatics movement, but also exercising is a low reward activity. I see that as being a really great way to start regulating the body and start bringing it back to back to a regulated space where you're not constantly on high alert. You're not constantly coming down from a high, because I think that those are the things that can frequently cause our stress, throughout our lives. So many of us are in jobs that we hate. So we, hate our job all day. So stress. And then we go home and, we'll eat sweets, we'll watch television, we're not connecting with people. And then just to turn, so it's reward, just to turn around and hate our lives again for the next 8 hours. So that's one way that I could see starting to regulate as a person, but also as a collective, is starting to really promote low reward activities. How about Melissa? How about for you? Anything that we haven't mentioned that you've also taken on? Journaling. Mm-hmm. And that made me think of affirmations. And I know that in a lot of ways that you've taken on, yes. Affirming. What does that look like for you? Do you create your own affirmations? Do you, get help from outside sources?
Yeah, I actually started reading, well, I've read it already, Louise Hay. I've read her popular book, You Can Heal Your Life. One of my friends, affirmations worked really well for her and her stomach issues disappeared. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing too, chronic pain looks different for everybody, and the way to help yourself is going to look different for everybody, with the tools and different things. But affirmations have helped me calm down my pain. Sometimes when I'm in a lot of chronic pain, it gets my mind off of my pain and helps me to feel more regulated, depending on what the affirmation is. And yeah.
Okay, great. And then how about for you, Sammy? Anything else that you can think of?
Yeah. So I like to tend toward down-regulating the nervous system, and creating space between ourselves and our thoughts and sensations. So I recommend everyone look up the cognitive distortions and start to be aware of when you're experiencing them. And 10 minutes daily of just sitting still in quiet and noticing the thoughts and sensations that are going through you without attaching anything to them. So we don't want to cling to those thoughts, because we live in a space that everything we think is fact, and it's not. Our brains just have energy pumping through that generate thoughts, and those thoughts are not necessarily factual, true, or helpful in any way. So when we can learn to sit still and breathe and just listen and notice, we can start to choose what we want to take on as truth and what we want to let go of and let pass us by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in doing so, we don't have to be so triggered all the time by every thought that comes through our mind, because we can create this space, this distance where we have choice. And so I generally recommend 10 minutes daily meditation to anyone and everyone. And also starting to notice where this pain or illness, what the source of it is. Is this from is it from a physical trauma? Because somatic movement therapy or somatic experiencing might be the way to go. Versus, is this a psychological trauma? Is this a generational trauma? Acceptance and self-love might be the way to go, though I recommend both for everyone. So
I was going to say, so much of it feeds into each other. When you look at studies on people's postures and what it actually creates inside of the body, if you hold this posture for 2 or more minutes, cortisol actually starts to get produced on a higher level in the body, and testosterone goes down. But if you stand in this position for 2 minutes, your testosterone levels actually
power stance.
Your Wonder Woman stance, right?
Yes.
And that's all been scientifically proven. So it's all connected. The mind and the body the mind's not going to do one thing while the body does another in a lot, unless of course you have your injury trauma. And then what happens, right? You get injured, bam, your body changes, and then this starts to change.
Which is why you and I share so many clients, Kira, because you have to work on both the mental and the physical. Your brain is an organ of your body. Your mind is a function of your body. Your brain, is to your body as your heart is to your body. It's all connected and it's all intertwined. So, so frequently we separate those, like your psychology is separate from your physicality, but it's not at all. And so, making sure that we're working on both of those things simultaneously is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. And then Heimdall's Gate has a message from Melissa. Your ancestors made it out of the caves through all the world wars, survived the plague. They sent you some pretty awesome genes down through your time. You can do this. That's great. I love it. Awesome. Let's see. I want to make sure that everybody in the chat gets heard here. Let's see. Ayana said, gambling is high reward if, like me, you always pick horses by current condition rather than historical performance. Yes. And then Heimdall's Gate says, my wife and I are talking about how everything is passed down earlier this week. We need to remember that our ancestors were the survivors. We are the fittest. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, it says, I'm gambling with some plant-based ground gumballs for the burritos later this week. Wish me luck.
Yes, good luck.
On the show. So, awesome, everybody. I think that's it for our show. It's 12:03 and my computer's about to die. So
yeah, definitely.
So thank you to everybody that joined us in the chat. It was a very lively chat. I enjoyed hearing all of your input. You guys are really fun and funny. Thank you, Melissa, for joining and presenting this topic for us, because it is a topic that Sammy and I talk about quite a bit in our own personal time and in our professional time. So it was fun to be able to jump into it today with our audience and with you, and hearing your personal story and how you are and how you're dealing with it, how you're empowering yourself in a lot of ways. And then, of course, Sammy, to my sister bitch, thanks for coming. Thanks for wearing smart glasses today.
Yeah, and thank you to Cody for being so cute and intrusive all the time.
Oh, speaking of cuteness, I'm sorry.
Pause before we go. We need a dose of cuteness before leaving.
I mean, as if I wasn't enough. But look at this baby I just got.
Oh.
Isn't she so? I'm in love with her. She's so cute.
Oh, Animals are so sweet and loving, and definitely can help to downregulate our nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. I just
therapy animals for the win. Also, want to make sure to all of our audience, our viewers, make sure you like us, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell so that you can get notifications when we are going live and when we've posted something. And check out our description later, because we'll probably post the links to the research that we've done. And the books that Melissa has recommended. So keep an eye out for that.
Lovely. All right, everybody. That's it. I will see you on the flip side. If you're joining the Hard Lens Media Patreon show, I'll probably see you there. I think I'm on it. I didn't cancel. So all right. Mwah. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Happy Sunday.
Peace.